Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Cott. I'm delighted to be joined by Record Sports Ryan McDonald. Ryan, how's it going?
Dan, not bad, not bad. Absolutely delighted the transfer window's closed. I'm not sure Brendan Rodgers is, mind you, or maybe he is, I don't know.
Aye, I was going to say we will definitely be talking Brendan Rodgers and Celtic. I feel like quite a lot in this episode. Keith Jackson, it's normally here, but he's obviously away on. He's going to be on Scotland duty this week in Denmark for the game of Friday night. And look, I don't want to say it, but some people saying, Ryan, this is a transfer window upgrade. I'm not saying that. Just it's just what some of the rumours are saying. Just to let you know.
I'll take that. I'll take it as a Marky Owen signing.
Right, look, I think you touched on it. Celtic is really the only place for us to start. I think we've already got some comments coming in from Celtic fans, and to Celtic fans and everyone else. If you want to get in touch and get involved in the conversation, let us know your thoughts on your team's transfer window. Please do. We'll try and read it out. But Ryan, how and why, how on earth did Celtic end up in this position? I can't get my head around it.
It's absolutely madness, Daniel. Madness that Celtic find themselves in this situation. But to some, it might not actually come as a surprise because this is just a recurring theme year after year, summer after summer. And lessons simply aren't been learned. That's the facts in the matter. Lessons aren't been learned. Brendan Rodgers alluded to it in his press conference on Friday, saying it's a trend is the word that he used. It happened under Ange Postecoglou, happened under Neil Lennon, even happened under Ronnie Dyler. This is just an ongoing issue, and now I think it's reached kind of an end game of some sort, whether that's Brendan Rodgers or whether that's someone from the hierarchy paying the price for a completely disastrous transfer window. I don't know. But there's got to be some sort of change. There's got to be some sort of accountability for the shambles that unfolded over the summer. I don't know even where you start. I mean, you look back at Benjamin Siegrist's interview, I think it was with an Australian podcast, maybe a month ago or something, and he claimed that 2 deals collapsed, that he was on the verge of, he'd agreed to leave Celtic because the buying clubs were ignored by the board, by Michael Nicholson. He claims that the Celtic board simply didn't answer the calls, just point blank ignored them. And that seems to be have just been a kind of a common theme throughout the transfer window. You look at the way some of the players have kind of even been treated. You look at Yang, he was down in Birmingham and ready to sign a deal, and then Birmingham had to pull the plug because they refused to wait any longer, and they went and signed Patrick Roberts instead. You look at Marco Tilio, he was held hostage. For summer. He was clearly surplus to requirements.
And they should have done that with Nicholas Kuhn.
Exactly. Exactly. But it was Marco Tilio was forced to wait around because Celtic had no backup wingers. I mean, he wasn't even in any of the matchday squads, but all it took was one injury to Yang, who's suddenly been promoted to a first team player, and Celtic were snookered, and Taylor would have been drafted in.
Aye.
You look at Stephen Welsh, Plymouth were keen. Celtic hesitated. I think it was due to international loan restrictions. He eventually goes on loan to Motherwell in the last hours. Ida travels twice to Swansea to undergo 2 medicals. The deal was agreed at the end of last week, and it's only sanctioned in the final hours after, days of waiting around. And then even look at Go Ahead Eagles, who reportedly laughed bids out the door from Celtic for Jacob Broom. And even I think one of the directors told Celtic to conduct their business like Rangers. It's just debacle after debacle. And it's if you're a Celtic fan, it's got to be worrying. The way the club's conducting their business, they're almost becoming a laughing stock. It's almost as if if Celtic come to the door with a bid for a player, clubs across Europe might just look at it and think it's another low ball transfer. That's not even applied to them.
Aye.
The reputation's on the line here. They're brilliant at selling players. They get the maximum value for selling players, but they try to lowball. Why does it take so long to get deals over the line with players coming in? You look at Balakwisha. They've been tracking that guy for 12 months, and then they eventually sign him when they're out the Champions League.
Even as well, Ryan, Kasper Dolberg identified at the weekend. Any other club would go, right, what's the price? Done. but Celtic let it drag on, and then all of a sudden Monday, Ajax need a player and steal him.
Yeah, I mean, a Celtic really couldn't have afforded to get that one wrong, and they did. Ajax come. That's the risk you take when you leave things literally to the last hours and the last minutes of a transfer window. Is all it takes is a club like Ajax to come in and torpedo the deal, and that's it. That's it done. To be honest, it's just an insane way of doing business. There's clearly no recruitment strategy at the club. It was utterly. It must be humiliating, embarrassing, whatever word you want to describe it, for fans knowing that the club was relying on other clubs and agents offering players at the last minute. It's not even players that have been scouted or have been on the radar. It's literally players that have been told that they've got no future at the respective clubs, and it's just last minute business trying to get them out the door. It's absolutely incredible.
I've actually, sorry to jump in, Ryan, but I've actually been handed a little note from the Record Sport online team, always on the ball, just as we've gone live. The latest name that is apparently in talks with Celtic is Patrick Bamford. He's, according to reports and other, obviously, less notable media outlets, Celtic have made an inquiry for Patrick Bamford. He's a free transfer now. He's left Leeds United. Obviously, Kelechi Iheanacho is the other one. But we have a story in Record Sport Online this evening that even that might get hijacked. There's a team in Turkey that are apparently... So it just goes from the...
On Patrick Bamford, I noticed that fans were kind of almost half expecting that. They were joking about it last night, but there was punters on Twitter almost half expecting that name to come up. And yeah, they are just that just sums up things, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, just as well, we've got plenty of comments coming in. I'm going to run through them. This one, we've got a couple of people saying this as well, and it's a fair comment. Mark saying he's actually trying to get interviews, and he mentioned it before as well. And David Beattie, who screams his point here, asked the question: the media, you're playing a major part. Why are you not calling out Desmond, Nicholson, the rest of the board, and another shambles of a window? Even more so, why do they never address the fans? We need answers. All I can say is, I can assure you, this Hotline show as a show, we've made several attempts to try and speak to the Celtic hierarchy. Believe me, and Ryan, I know you'll be the same. That
let's do this.
To sit down with them.
Let's have an open invitation for the Celtic board to come on to Hotline Live.
Aye.
We can go through everything that needs to be said. I'm sure Keith would love that as well. So it's not a case of not attempting to get interviews. The Celtic, Michael Nicholson hasn't actually sat down with the press since 2023 when Brendan Rodgers was unveiled. That's the last time that he's actually sat down with the press, I believe. Other than that, you get the AGM, which happens in November. That's the only time Celtic shareholders, not even the fans, it's a closed doors event for shareholders, hear from Michael Nicholson. I wouldn't be surprised if fans have kind of forgotten his voice. It's been that long since he's spoken. Right. There's not even, they're not even coming forward for any in-house media interviews, for any watered down questions from the club media team. There's not even any of that. I think the last time that happened was maybe during the COVID season, when I think Peter Lawwell came out and almost took accountability for the shambles that unfolded that year. So it's not a case of we're not trying to get these accountability from these guys. It's a case of it's a closed door, so there's no options to do it.
Believe me. I mean, me and Keith talked about this a couple of months ago. We've tried. Believe me, I can assure everyone watching. We've also, look, plenty of comments coming in. I will read these out. We're also going to talk about Rangers, and I want to talk about Aberdeen and some of the other deals that have went down across the country on deadline day. But obviously, Ryan, we have here at the Daily Record, the Record Celtic and Record Rangers podcast, our kind of sister shows. On the Record Celtic podcast today was the one and only Chris Sutton, and he went on a little bit of a, I wouldn't say rant, but he gave his thoughts on the Celtic situation. And I thought it was pertinent to maybe have a little look. So here is what Chris Sutton had to say earlier on today.
I don't know this, but is there some dynamic now higher up at the club which just isn't working? Has there been a breakdown somewhere? Because for Celtic to be in this position is absolutely remarkable, and that's speculation. But what could be the reasons for this? Is it because Brendan's in his last year of his contract, and there's that sort of uncertainty about whether he's going to sign or not? I doubt he will sign. I mean, my gut sort of feeling with this is because of what happened last time, Brendan leaving early. I don't think he'll do that again. I think that from his perspective, he would probably view this as, blimey, we've got a fight on to win the league this season, a serious fight on because of the lack of work we've done in the transfer market. But I'm going to show what a good coach I am. I'm going to get Celtic over the line, and then I'm going to wave goodbye to the club. I've done my job, and I'll see it through to the end this time and walk away. And Celtic still have a fair chance of winning the league. It's just that the club should never have been, or the team should never have been put in this position where they are going into a league season, and Rangers, all the turmoil which has happened across the city, all of a sudden, if you're a Rangers fan and you think, there've been a basket case this season with what's gone on with Russell Martin, but in many ways, I think the Celtic fan base at this particular time are probably just as angry, if not angrier.
But Chris, this is probably going to get worse in the situation that you guys have spoken about the main players. The main players are now, Celtic are going to have to go to the well with Callum McGregor and Dyson Maeda and players like that every single week. There is a chance they're going to break down. Celtic are 2 or 3 injuries away, for example, of being completely and utterly exposed in the Europa League. You're talking about Brendan Rodgers as, his credibility as a coach and wanting to show what a good coach he is. He's been left in a terrible position here, Chris.
I think that's a great point you make, and where everybody was looking forward to the Champions League and trying to go again in that and trying to make progress. I'm like you. I'm looking at the Europa League. Does Brendan Rodgers have to prioritise now in terms of domestically, just bread and butter, winning the league, or does he go full hit in the Europa League? This should never have been the position for him to have been in. There are areas of the team which are glaringly weak, where Celtic do not have the strength, depth, and the cover. And I'll say it again, Dyson Maeda, brilliant as he was last season, he has been flogged. And you talk about going back to the well. Celtic cannot keep going back to that same well, because eventually he will break down. So managing Dyson Maeda and his minutes and how crucial he is to the team is going to be a huge part of how Celtic get on. But the start of the season, he's missed a couple of big chances. He's back to the Dyson Maeda we sort of remember from the start. But it's not just sort of the forward area is of massive concern. The lack of creativity, the lack of pace. And speed in those wide areas, the lack of players who want to take the fullbacks on, that's been alarming at the start of the season. And it's okay, if we're going to strip everything back, Celtic got over the line late against St Mirren, probably deserved to win, but didn't create loads of chances. Aberdeen, it was Negrin got his goal, nice finish, brilliant finish from Hatate. I know walloped Falkirk in the cup, but Livingston at home, comfortable win against them. But in the games which have really mattered, Celtic haven't shown up in the final third, and that's a worry. And then, have Celtic really strengthened that much? Maybe these players will come in who they've signed, Tonetki and Balikwisha, and they'll be the wow factor. Negrin has done all right domestically, but I just think from where Celtic are now to where they were a season ago, 2 seasons ago, it's night and day. And I'm not the only person seeing that, because you're seeing the same things, and so are the tens of thousands of Celtic supporters around the world. They're seeing the same thing as this and thinking, well, how can you have that much success and then not build on it? How have the club gone backwards? And Mixline was brilliant at the start. It's sort of not just the whole of this transfer window. It's the fact that Celtic are weaker than they were before the start of the weekend, which is an alarming position to be in when you're getting into the final stages of the transfer window, and Celtic, should they have sold Adam Eder? I mean, you can't leave yourself short in that situation, regardless of what people think about Adam Eder. That now looks to be a crazy decision.
Michael, you speak to Brendan Rodgers a lot. You've been there when he's spoken about he'll do his 3 years. You've been there when he said, he was asked, would you leave before? No chance would I be doing that. How do you think the situation's changed for him on the back of this?
Listen,
where do you think it's changed?
In the last week, 10 days, I gradually, in fact, right away from pre-season, we're out there in Portugal and Italy with him, when he started to make his louder his demands for quality and all that stuff. It's got louder and louder. Since then, the last fortnight, he has looked utterly deflated and defeated. He looks totally scunnered by the whole situation. I mean, and I'm thinking, I'm going to see what you think, Chris. He said, I'm not here to maintain this club. I want to develop it and progress it. He talked about the ambition and where the club sees itself and where it wants to be. These are things that are going louder by the week, right? We know what happened the last time. We know the kind of outcry and anger and rage when he left the last time. Would he be forgiven this time for saying, this is not what I signed up for, I'm off and leave just now? Would he be forgiven for that? I think Celtic fans at this point in time would say, you know what? We don't blame you. I don't know what you think, Chris.
No, I'm in the position where I think that, what we don't know, and this is where it's difficult for us all. We don't know the conversations which have gone on with regards to recruitment, how it works. Has he asked for certain players, and the club have just not sanctioned those signings? But on the face of it, with what Brendan has said and the state of the squad, which he's now going to have to work with up until the January window, he has been, the club are in a weaker position. So from his position, he has been let down. So he may feel like he's going to walk away, but I don't see him doing that because of what happened last time. As simple as that. Had the position last time not happened when he walked away, then I'm pretty sure he was. But that would, that whole situation has, I think would be in the back of his mind. And as I say, because of what a mess Rangers are in, and Hearts are a bit of an unknown. Hibs have had they've got a pretty decent team, but because Celtic should still win the league, but they're relying on a fair bit of luck now in terms of being fortunate with the injury situation. So I suspect he'll stay on. I may be wrong. Is he in his rights to walk? He would probably say that he is, because of the fact that he hasn't been backed. But as I say, the mitigating part of that is we don't know what conversations have gone on.
Chris Sutton there on the Record Celtic podcast earlier today, Ryan. Right, plenty of comments coming in. Let me run through a few and get your take on it. Marzuno says Rodgers could test himself in Spain, get 20 million a year in Saudi, a jolly in MLS. I'm surprised he didn't chuck it this morning. Mad Fox says the board have embarrassed themselves. More importantly, they've embarrassed the club. The league is wide open now, and this team couldn't get through the Conference League, never mind the Europa. Paul says Rodgers and the board have to be removed. This happens every transfer window. Remember, he was the one that wanted Ida at all cost, and totally agree with Sutton. This should never have been allowed to happen. Stephen says in August and September 2014, so more than 11 years ago, Peter Lawwell repeatedly stated that every penny of the club's revenue would be reinvested back into the team. Never should a club have 80 to 100 million pounds collecting interest. Robert says the Celtic board are forcing Rodgers out. They want a manager who won't rock the boat and they can control. Rodgers had given the board 10 players at £1 million each. He either brought them all in. And just finally on Rodgers, Ryan, Marzuno again says Ida can't leave unless we get a replacement in. Rodgers did say that. I think he said it at Ibrox after the game. He's had his legs totally cut off now. I mean, totally undermined.
Yeah. Well, we said it on Friday. And then he might have re-emphasised it again at Ibrox. But I think the tables have really turned. I know Brendan Rodgers has said there's absolutely no chance that he's going to leave Celtic before the end of his 3-year contract. But it's just been completely undermined. Like 72 hours prior to Adam Ida being sold, he said that he can't be sold without any replacements in the door. And I actually asked Brendan Rodgers, I was there on Friday, if he would like two strikers in.
Aye, that's right.
He smiled and said yes. I think he knew at the back of his mind that there was very little chance that would have happened. But for Brendan Rodgers to come out and be so firm on his stance with Adam Idah, only for him to then be sold and there to be no replacement or replacements in the door, I really do think he's been undermined, and it'd be, I'm sure it'll be one of the first questions that will be asked at this first press conference after international duty, how he feels about that. Yeah, they might get Iheanacho in and Bamford in, but are they really the quality that Celtic should be striving for? Are they really the qualities that they've been looking for since January to replace Kyogo, who, by the way, is still not been replaced? They're kind of scraping the kind of bottom of the barrel now in free agents and players who have struggled in the last 2 years. And I mean, you look at Iheanacho, he actually rejected Celtic in January for Middlesbrough. And now we're going back with the begging bowl, asking him if he fancies another crack at it.
And just incidentally, I've got a lot of family that are Middlesbrough season ticket holders. They live in Middlesbrough, and spoke to them last night. And without being unkind, they were saying he was like a figure of fun at Middlesbrough. Like he was the worst player. He would get ironically jeered when he get pulled off, and he didn't look interested. He would just jog about the park. I mean,
yeah. I mean, but when he was at Man City, I think he was a prodigy.
Aye.
And then he joined Leicester. I think he was paid about £20 million for him. So Rodgers has worked with him. He's obviously confident might be able to get a tune out of him. But when you look at the list of targets at the start of the summer, I'm pretty sure Iheanacho's name would have been probably at the bottom, which is why they're scrambling around trying to get him in as a free agent. And you look at it, I mean, they've sold £17 million worth of pounds of talent in Idah and Kyogo, and replaced them with a £1.5 million in Shin, and then Johnny Kenny and Callum Osmond, who Callum Osmond, hasn't even played a senior game of football yet. It's absolutely crazy, and they've lost. I was looking at some stats here. They've actually lost 73 goal contributions from last season. So you had Idah, who scored 20 goals, provided an assist, Kyogo with 12 goals and 4 assists, and then Nicholas Kuhn with 21 and 15 assists. That quality has not been replaced, and that's the buzzword that Brendan Rodgers always says is quality, and he's right, because again, it's nowhere to be seen this transfer window up front.
Yeah, in the comments, John says Rodgers shouldn't walk, as it only saved this incompetent board money, which they won't spend on players anyway. It's the board who needs shaking out, not Rodgers. And just before we move on from Celtic, Ryan, a couple of Rangers fans have been in touch. Rangers easy okay, friends of the show, says, what a chance for us if we can finally click and go on a run. It's a big if, but no excuses for Russell Martin. He's been back big time. This is our best chance to win the title in years. And Singing the Blues says, I think the Celtic board have gotten too comfortable with the lack of challenge. Now they're in a flap. Look, sitting here right now, I understand that Celtic have got a 6-point head start on Rangers. But I guess that you would still make Celtic favourites in that regard. But I'm a lot less convinced Celtic are going to win the league than I was last week or a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about Rangers, they must be kicking, Russell Martin must be kicking himself that they've managed to fall 6 points behind so early in the campaign. But do you know what? That lead can be wiped out in 2 games. That's the way that Rangers have to look at it. 2 defeats for Celtic and 2 wins for Rangers in the back and level points. So I don't even think Celtic or Brendan Rodgers will even be looking at the league table this early in the season. And you could probably flip that and say the same for Rangers. There's still a long road ahead. Celtic are undeniably weaker. Rangers, you've got to say, with the amount of money it's been spent, must be stronger. They've spent more than 2 strikers, and Celtic have the entire window. So that kind of tells you all you need to know. Rangers have shown their ambition, and they've backed Russell Martin to the hilt. Now it's really down to them, to Russell Martin, to get a tune out of them, and for Rangers to produce. The fans must believe that there's a real chance. This is probably the biggest chance they've had, and definitely since 2021 when Stephen Gerrard won the title. To end Celtic's dominance. And I tell you what, Hearts and Hibs.
Well, Graham Snedden in the comments, Graham says dismissing Hearts, the arrogance, and he's kind of laughing. But look, if there was ever going to be a season where something like that would happen.
No, I definitely don't dismiss Hearts at all. Or Hibs, I know Hibs drew at the weekend, but Hearts are joint top of the table with Celtic 4 games in. They've spent wisely. They've got a brilliant manager at the helm. I mean, and obviously Tony Bloom has set out his ambitions for Hearts to win the title within the next 10 years. could come a lot sooner the way Celtic are doing their business, and obviously Rangers are investing significantly as well. So, you know what? It could be a 3 or 4 way title race, 3 or 4 way title race this season. So we'll just need to wait to see what happens. But yeah, I don't think other clubs will have a better chance to stop Celtic in this season.
Just, I know I said finally a minute ago and then I'll come back to it, but I know I'm asking you how long a piece of string is, Ryan, but do you think Rodgers will consider walking away after last night's shambles?
I mean, as I said, I think this is the fact he's been undermined publicly on Adam Media. I think that's personally, I think that may be a game changer in the back of his mind.
I agree.
You know, he's obviously said there's no chance he's going to leave. He's come back. He's probably repaired his reputation with the fans, or 90% of the fans. He's won titles. He's won trophies. He took Celtic far in Europe. His mission when he came back was to make Celtic a force, or at least competitive again in Europe. He did that by taking them to the Champions League last season. They were in a position of strength to build, and now it's a case of 1 step forward, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 steps back this season. They've downsized, they've assets stripped, and they're quite frankly a shadow of the side that went toe-to-toe with Bayern Munich. So I've said it kind of all summer. What incentive does Brendan Rodgers have to extend his contract beyond next season? I don't think he has any now. He said as well about he's not here to maintain. Celtic aren't even maintaining. They're going backwards, and Rodgers he's an elite manager. I think he'll have too many other options to go to. You know, test himself in Spain, to test himself back down in England, or even go to Saudi Arabia and make millions, or wherever he wants to go. I think he'll have plenty of options.
It was a very different story across the city, obviously, last night on deadline day. I caught up with Andy Newport, Record Sports Andy Newport, a little bit earlier on, just to talk about how Rangers finished up last night. And here's what we had to say earlier on today. Joined in the hotline live now by Record Sports Andy Newport. Andy, how was your deadline day?
That was okay for me. I was on the early shift, so I got to put my feet up and go for dinner after 6 o'clock. Left it to other boys to work on into the wee small hours. So mine was fairly sedate for once. I'm sure should add.
Sorry for some.
Yeah,
Obviously the big talking point from Rangers. I mean, look, see from the outside looking in, pretty good end to the window for Rangers. It seems.
Well, they certainly get more bodies in. They spent a fair bit of money. But I think there's still huge question marks over the squad. Some of the recruits, I mean, obviously £8 million spent on Youssef Chermeti. I think we've spoken at length in Hotline Live about just how there's no promises anymore, especially not at that kind of value of talent. £8 million, especially down in England, is pocket change for these clubs. So once upon a time, I've just written a piece for the website talking about once upon a time, £4.5 million would you get your Ronald de Boer with 50, 60 caps for Holland, a Champions League winners medal, and 350 appearances for Ajax and Barcelona. Now it gets you Oscar Cortes. So yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of questions over this Rangers team, and I think there's still some big gaps in the squad. When you look at left back, they're pretty light there. Only Jaden Makoma there. I mean, I think there's talk that Derek Cornelius obviously came in from Marseille deadline day could fill there, but he's a centre back by trade, so asking him to fill in there, I'm not sure that's going to be a natural fit. It's funny because Scott and Gavin Berry myself this morning were discussing what that could mean for how he shapes up. You know, I suppose there is a potential he could maybe move to a 3 at the back and, you know, use, you know, Oliver Antman and Jerry Gassama in a sort of wing back role, and that would maybe, you know, give him some extra depth, certainly on the width, or extra options in the width, and you know maybe stiffen up his defence by going to 3 at the back, but that remains to be seen. But yeah, I think there's still some big question marks over this Rangers squad.
See, just to go back to Chermiti, Andy, I know it was yourself that broke the news at the weekend over the £8 million transfer fee, and as you say, in this day and age, sadly, that's pocket change to a lot of teams. But were you surprised to see Rangers spend that much on one player, and not just one player, but a player that's, we said yesterday you could add Vaclav Cherny, you could add Abdullah Sima, someone that's Rangers can do it?
Yeah, I'm surprised in the sense that it's been a long time since Rangers have been, spending anything like that. I mean, really, so there was talk of £6 million for Danilo, but really that was about £3.5 million with add-ons. If you're talking about in terms of straight up fees, I think the last time they spent anything close to that was around about the £7 million mark with Ryan Kent, and that's you're maybe going back 5-6 years for that one. So, and then before it, obviously the Andre Toriflo signing, when was that, 2000, £12 million. So yeah, it was just the size of the figure. It's been a long time since Rangers have spent so heavily on one player. But yeah, more surprised at what that now gets you is that, especially if you're spending it in England, if somebody said to me today that, they could go and spend £8 million in a league like Croatia or the Czech Republic, and it probably gets you the best player there. Whereas £8 million in England gets you not very much. So listen, this is all stayed on the basis that we've not seen Chermette and how he's going to fit into this team. But really what Rangers are doing is taking a punt and hoping that a kid who hasn't really succeeded at Everton, a team that have been crying out for goals down the road, by the way, and obviously he's had his injury troubles as well, but he's not really caught fire down there. It's now going to somehow work out up here. It just seems to me, obviously Kevin Thelwell was involved in it, and he knows the player well, having been involved in the deal that took him to Goodison from Sporting Lisbon. But it just looks to me like Rangers are taking a bit of a gamble on a player that they don't know all that much about in terms of how he's going to adapt to Scotland, how he's going to fit into this team. Because I say that on the basis that there isn't that much evidence to go by in terms of how he copes at first team level. I think he's got 7 career goals. I think he's only started 20 games as a professional. So that is not a huge track record to be judging anything on, certainly not to be paying £8 million for him. So yeah, I can understand why a lot of fans are very sceptical about that deal in particular.
The other two transfer bits that I wanted to get your take on, Andy, was Nico Raskin staying, which I think could be a big moment in the season for Rangers, and also Cyril Dessers leaving. And I know that was in the offing for a while, but just when I was sitting thinking about it last night, 52 goals over 2 seasons. And look, I know he's got his faults. I know he misses 5 chances or whatever before he scores, but that's going to be hard to replicate.
Yeah, listen, I think I've spoken ad nauseum about Cyril Dessers in these 2 years at the club. I mean, what we'll say is a fabulous mindset and the ability just to shrug off mistakes. And even in mixed zones where he was an absolute stalwart for us journalists, where he would come in and win, lose or draw, he would always be the guy who would stop and chat away to you after a game. You'd ask him sometimes if missed chances, they would look at you sort of quizzically as if, what missed chances? He has this remarkable ability just to brush off anything like that and just go again. And that's what got him these 52 goals at Ibrox, because there was certainly times where I think strikers of who are weaker mindset would have just crumbled. But yeah, listen, I think he's 30, coming up 31. Rangers can't be affording to turn down bids of nearly £4 million for guys who are going to, their value is only going to go one way from that point onwards. So I think the surprise was that he was the one who was allowed to go, considering that he is still contributing, rather than Danilo, who I had high hopes from in pre-season. I thought, given he'd missed last season's pre-season and was never really, it was always playing catch-up after that, but with a full summer under his belt and a run of games that he could get up to sort of the levels he was at before he did his knee during Luke Clement's first few weeks in charge, and it just hasn't happened for him. And I'm led to believe he's on a pretty serious weekly wedge. I just thought that might have been one that they would look to sort of get off the wage bill. It hasn't happened, so he's going to be around, but he's now firmly down the pecking order. And if you also get Majowski and Chermette ahead of him, I think, obviously they're the new manager's men. So I think Danilo's got a lot of work to do if he's going to see any game time in the weeks ahead. And
Raskin, Andy, do you anticipate he'll be able to patch it up with Russell Martin and get back in the team?
I think it's imperative from both sides that he does. Hopefully, Nico Rasmussen get a World Cup to be able before the end of the season.
Yeah.
And Rangers simply can't have a player of his quality sitting on the bench or even worse sitting in the stands. He has to be part of the plan going forward. So, listen, it's time for some adult conversations. Both he and Russell Martin to put their big boy pants on and sit down and work out their differences, because we all know, I've spoke to Barry Ferguson enough times to know that he's an opinionated wee guy, he's a feisty wee guy. You see enough of that on the pitch. He's plenty to say for himself, but I think when you get him in the right place, if you get him in the right position, with the right mindset, he's one of the best players in Scotland. There's no doubt about that. But he has to be handled carefully, and that's now I think a question mark that can be placed over Russell Martin. You saw the way that the Hamza Gamani standoff ended with a pretty ludicrous situation where he was refusing to come off the bench, claiming to be injured. Now you've got a standoff and he was one of the club's biggest assets at that point. Now the club's other biggest asset has now had a fallout with the manager as well. So that raises question about how he's handling the big personalities at the club. So listen, I think, as I said, for both parties, that this has to be thrashed out, because there's an awful lot at stake in the months ahead for both.
Andy, as always, it's an absolute pleasure having you in the Hotline Live. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll be pestering you soon to get you back on, no doubt.
We'll see. I'll need to see if I might be washing my hair at that point, Daniel. So
Nice one. Cheers, Andy.
Yeah, thanks.
Andy, report a little bit earlier on there, Ryan. Let me throw some Rangers comments at you, and we'll crack on. Marzuno says Rangers sold their two best attackers, bombed out their best midfielder. They can't talk about anything. Dennis says the panel are questioning £8 million on a striker from Everton, but forget Celtic paid £9 million on the biggest dud ever. Ida, I would just say on that Celtic paid £9 million after he did prove for 6 months, scoring a win on the cup finals, scoring vital goals, that he could do it. I mean, Chermiti at the minute, 22 games for Everton, 0 goals. As Andy said there, I think he's only played 20-odd professional games. I mean, Kevin Thelwell, who we know signed him at Everton, he must be utterly convinced that this boy is going to be a star.
Yeah, you just got to trust Kevin Thelwell's judgment on this one. He's, like you say, he must be utterly convinced that he's ready to explode onto the scene at Rangers. It's a massive outlay. I think it's the second biggest outlay since Tori Andre Flo joined in, was it 2000?
Yeah, I think you're right.
So I get that there's kind of reservations over this boy because of the fact he's only scored 3 career goals. But at the same time, it's kind of a weird kind of situation, because, as I said, it's what, £8 to £10 million on a player, on a striker has been spent, and there's it seems as if Rangers fans aren't quite happy with it. There should be an excitement that the club are willing to push a boat out in guys like this. Mm-hmm. They're obviously convinced that, as I said, that he's got potential, and he can go on to become a star. So yeah, I think there's just got to be optimism, and I think there's got to be a bit of excitement that the board the club are willing to spend that amount of money on any single player. It's just going to be interesting to see where he fits in. Obviously, with Bojan Majowski up there as well, if Rangers will go for 2 up front, or they'll be rotated. I'm not quite sure, but it's exciting. I think it should be an exciting time for Rangers fans.
Singing the Blues in the comments points out the 22 games for Chermiti is misleading. He was only getting 5-10 minute cameos at Everton. Fair enough. Obviously, I can't claim to have watched many of his Everton performances. The other point I want to make about Rangers, though, is that he says Rome wasn't built in a day. Rangers will get it right. The one thing I would say is that, look, they've spent the guts of 30 million quid here, Rangers. I know they get 10 and a bit back in for Igaman and whatever, but there's no excuse for Russell Martin now. This is his team, and he's got to really mount a serious title challenge now. Yeah,
that's it. And the pressure was on him before. It's certainly on him now. There can be no excuse. Although, whether the Rangers... at the start of the season, I would have said that it would been unrealistic to expect Rangers to go ahead and overtake Celtic as the Kings of Scotland, whatever you want to call them. But the condition of the Celtic squad now, and how much money Rangers have invested, like you've said, I mean, that's probably unprecedented levels of spending for Rangers. And I mean, I can't recall last time they spent that much money.
It's pretty much since what, the Alex McLeish stick advocate area. I know Ryan Kent they spent £7 million on. can't really think of many others.
So, I mean, it'd be nonsensical. I know a large volume of the fans are wanting Russell Martin out the door after 11 games, but it'd be nonsensical for the board to invest that much money and to get rid of him. It's just not going to happen. You need to give them time. But you need to start delivering results and fast. Rangers can't afford any more slip-ups in the league early on. I think they need to build momentum and go on a proper run of wins now. And not only that, I think the fans will be expecting attractive football, which is what they were promising. Russell Martin came in. So yeah, the pressure was already there. There's definitely even more now that they've spent so much money. But yeah, as I say, you've got to trust the club's judgment in this one, and they're obviously confident that it'll be a shrewd investment.
We have a story in Record Sport Online today, Bojan Miovski, suggesting that Rangers are now the stronger side. Do you go along with that, or do you think it's too early to? I mean, in fact, I'll put my neck in the line. I keep asking you to do it. I think potentially they are right now. I mean, I don't know Chernity. I've never seen him play, but if he lives up to even half the bill, then he'll be a decent player. I don't know why Celtic didn't go for Miovski. Celtic are just so toothless now that I could understand the argument that Rangers are maybe stronger.
I think if you compare the squads and did a combined Celtic Rangers 11 at the end of last season, I don't think there's a single Rangers player that would have got into Celtic's start 11. Now you can make a case for, definitely up front, Bojan Miovski would walk into the Celtic start 11, I think. I know they've got Dyson Maeda, who they're probably going to rely upon up front now, but I still maintain his best position as a left mid. Although how many left mids does Celtic need? I don't know. Midfield, I think defensively Celtic have been solid. I still think Cameron Carter-Vickers is the best defender in Scotland.
The whole defence, to be fair, Celtic's defence looks really solid. I would definitely say that.
I think if Rangers and Russell Martin and Nico Raskin can settle the differences, you've got a Belgium international midfielder in there as well. By the way, on that, I think that's got to happen. One, because of the value. Nico Raskin is now entered the final 2 years of his contract. His value is only going to go down now unless Rangers can agree a new deal. So you can't let an asset like that, who could upwards of 10, 15 million pounds, you can't let an asset like that rot away in the stands. He needs to be playing, so there needs to be a solution to that issue. And like I think Andy mentioned as well, he'll have ambitions as well of playing in the World Cup and maintaining his place in the Belgian team. So if Rangers can get him on side again and get him playing, then that's another kind of major boost for them. So yeah, I think, to be honest, I need to think about it deeply, but I think there's areas where Rangers are stronger and areas where Celtic are stronger, so it's probably 50-50 at the minute.
I need to finish the show, Ryan, by congratulating Aberdeen, because John Ironside in the comments says you've got to mention Aberdeen signing Karlsson. Pretty outrageous for a player like that coming to us, and obviously he's referring to Jesper Karlsson, who joined Aberdeen on loan for the end of the season from Bologna last night. And to put it into context, Bologna paid €11 million or €11 million for him in 2023, and reportedly earlier this summer he was on the brink of a £5 million move to Udinese for it to fall through. He's obviously a Sweden international. He's still only 27. For Aberdeen to pull off a deal like that, and I'll throw in getting Kevin Nisbet back for 300 grand. I mean, that is an amazing bit of business, but they'll need it after the start to the season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that signing took everyone by surprise.
Aye.
It's definitely a signing of the window up here. I mean, that's a real statement of intent by Aberdeen as well. I know Jimmy Phelan's relationship with him has probably made the deal happen, but Aberdeen, you talk about Celtic being toothless. Aberdeen have been really blunt up front. I think they're the only team out of 42 in the SPFL that have yet to score a goal in the league this season.
Are they the only team?
The only team out of 42 in the SPFL who have yet.
See, Ryan, that's why we get you on stats like that. Excellent work.
So, yeah, they've obviously signed the big lad Yenge, who hasn't played for the month at Batodry in his early days so far. Right. But with Kevin Nisbet in, he's a proven goal scorer. He's a Scotland international. I think he took a few months to get up and running at Aberdeen last season, but he really came alive towards the end of it, definitely in the latter part of the season. I think he ended up with 12 goals, which is a decent return. But yeah, definitely the sign of Karlsson. That's the headliner. And Aberdeen obviously had to find a replacement for Shayden Morris, they've got a succession plan. They bring Carlson in, and then look what happens.
Exactly. Ryan, I think that brings to the end of Tuesday night's Hotline Live with Record Sport. Thank you very much for all the comments coming in, as ever. We really appreciate it. And we'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow. We hope you can join us then. Ryan, it's always a pleasure having you in the Hotline Live.
Enjoy that. Thanks so much, Dan.
Thanks, mate. And we'll be back tomorrow. Hope you can join us then. Cheers.